Hi, I'm Sarah from Homespun Childhood. I'm a former teacher turned homeschool mom of 3, and here at Homespun Childhood, I share all things curriculum, literacy, homeschooling, unit studies, and more. Today, we are going to look inside IEW's People and Places in Our Community. This is one of their theme-based writing programs geared for students. They say kindergarten, really first grade and second grade, in my opinion. So let's dive in. People and Places in Our Community is $35 for the student book, and that gives you free PDF downloads of the teacher manual. You can also purchase the teacher manual printed for $19. I just printed it myself and bound it. I do think it's worth printing this out or having access to it. So this is a theme-based program, and so what that means is it's going to teach the IEW structure and style, their writing method, through a theme. And so this theme is People and Places in Our Community, which is a great fit for younger elementary age students. So they will teach their components throughout this course using stories and pieces of writing that are about community helpers and whatnot. So let's dive in. We're going to start with the teacher's manual. Really, the books are essentially the same, except the teacher's manual has a gray box on it. And we'll look at that more in depth in a minute. So I have the teacher's manual here. It does not include a cover page like this. I printed that off. So if that's something that you want, just keep that in mind. We have accessing our downloads. We have our table of contents. Okay, so we can see here that we have the different IEW units: note making and outlines, writing from notes, retelling narrative stories, summarizing references, writing from pictures, inventive writing. So they're going to work through those different units using topics like construction, airports, the bank, emergency room, plumber, dentist, that kind of thing. So this is the introduction for you. It's going to tell you a little bit about the student book versus the supplies. We're going to go into the appendices, which include a word list section, some game pieces, and some vocabulary cards. IEW does include vocabulary in their theme-based writing. There's a little note to parents and teachers, and then we come to our scope and sequence. This scope and sequence is listed out by week. So the pacing here is suggested for a weekly topic. Obviously, you can slow down or speed up as you see fit. Alongside their pacing, we have the units listed here. So some units are only a couple weeks, whereas other units are longer. And they have suggested read-alouds, which I really like. These tie into the theme. So you can flush this out into a morning basket or more of a kind of unit study type approach. Then we jump right into our lessons. So this is the first lesson. We're going to look at this both in the teacher guide and in the student guide. The student guide is just going to show us this component right here. So here's the student guide, and here is the teacher guide. So this portion right here is what your student is going to see. Okay, and so because of that, I'm just going to stick in the teacher guide. The student guide continues the same way. They just don't have the extra information for the students. So at the top of each lesson, they have the title of the lesson, and then they have their structure, the style, the writing topics, their read-aloud stories again, and they have some information over here if you're taking their teaching, writing, structure, and style course. They also have some information about outlining here. You do not have to take the teaching, writing, structure, and style course, the parent or teacher educator course, to teach thematic-based writing. You don't actually have to take it to teach any of their things. However, I do recommend it if you are investing in IEW for a long, kind of long haul, to consider that at some point. And if you're going to teach structure and style for students, I do think the class is beneficial. You can also take that course and then DIY your approach to IEW using the information they provide you in that course. So you could tie it into your own content studies. So the structure for this one is note making and outlines. We don't have any style dress ups. That's what they call their kind of fancying it up. They have the writing topic, the carpenter, big machines, and then the assignment. Okay, day one, you're going to read the background information on this page to the student, discuss what a community is and places and people the student already knows in their community. So we're already kind of talking about this idea of partnership reading and writing. So the parent is going to read this. If you had an advanced reader, they could obviously read that themselves. Then we have this little toolbox here, construction equipment. And then we move into here to day 1. Read and discuss the source text 1A, The Carpenter. Here are some questions to get you started. Have you ever used a tape measure to measure wood? Have you ever used a hammer to drive in nails? What are wires and pipes for? Electrical lines and plumbing. Once you have discussed the source text, you're ready to create an outline. And so this is a situation where, depending on your student, they might be capable of reading this independently themselves, or they might not be. Either one is fine. You can still use this program to begin teaching the IEW structure and how to outline things and summarize things, even if your child is not reading fluently enough to do this passage. I, in fact, will be using this program with my first grade daughter in the fall, only because she saw it on the shelf and then saw it in a catalog and was like, Mama, we got to do this. She won't be able to read these yet. That's okay. We're going to partner together. Maybe by the end of the year, she's reading some of them, maybe not. So I'll read it for her, and then we'll talk about the passage and the keywords together. Day 1 continued. We're going to be using the source text and model how to find the keywords in a source text. Demonstrate how to circle the words, carpenter, build rooms, then the rest of the paragraph. So we're working on finding the keywords as a way to summarize the information. I love that they have in here that if the student has difficulty writing, scribe for him in his student book and when he writes his compositions. So again, partnering with your child. If something like writing all these different words is too much for them at that time, how much can they do? Can they do a couple of them? Can they do every other one? Think of a way where you can partner with your child and meet them where they are, and then slowly start to push just a little bit more. So we're still on the carpenter here. Day 2, we're going to read the page together about retelling from notes. IEW weaves in public speaking with their components. They want you practicing sharing back the information that you learned by looking up and talking, and then looking back to your notes and then talking some more. So they weave that in. Day 2, we're going to build a carpenter box. In the student book, they have some cutout materials so you can build your toolbox. Again, working kind of on that vocabulary. Okay, and then we're still on week 1 here. Day 3, you're going to read and discuss this source text on big machines, talking about the different types of machines. And day 3, you're going to make your keyword outline again. And then we move on to roads, which is their next unit. If we fast forward to about halfway through, we have lesson 10, the emergency room part 1. The structure here is IEW Unit 3, retelling narrative stories. The style is LY adverbs, who, which, clause, dress-ups. So the way that IEW is teaching is systematically and explicitly teaching a child how to go from either a source text or from a story or from a picture to summarizing that, getting words on the paper, and then adding in some style. This might be really different than other programs in terms of how they teach writing or how you learned writing yourself. A lot of folks think, oh, creative writing, that's kind of the way to go. They tell all these great stories and we just write them down and they narrate and I write it down. That's great, and I do not want to dismiss that at all. I think it's really important and valuable to see our students as writers and, value the storytelling. All kids are natural storytellers. However, kids also need exposure to systematic and explicit writing instruction, learning how to take these notes from a passage, from a story, from a picture, translate it into an outline, turn that outline into paragraphs, dress it up, work through the editing process, share it with public speaking. That stuff can be really hard for kids, even if they are really good at narrating a whole story or telling a whole story they made up on their own. A lot of times kids freeze when they get to the paper or the computer or whatever it may be for so many reasons, right? It's much easier and more natural for us to talk, to communicate. And when we're looking at blank paper, it's, okay, where do I even start? And then all these other thoughts like, wow, I can't write fast enough to get all the words in my head onto the paper or the computer, or I'm not going to use, these words because I don't know how to spell them. So I'm going to simplify the words I'm using to ones I know how to spell. I have seen that happen so many times as a classroom teacher in 3rd grade and 1st grade. It doesn't matter. Kids and adults alike often struggle with staring at a blank page. And if we don't give them the tools for how to tackle that, or how to tackle a prompt, or how to summarize information and share it back in an engaging way, then they're not going to get there, right? So I really value systematic and explicit writing instruction. If it's not IEW, definitely look for that. And you can bounce back and forth between creative writing or more, I don't want to say beautiful, but more like fun, I guess, type writing, but it's really important to incorporate this into. Okay, end of that soapbox. I'm sorry. So here we go. Our writing topic is the emergency room, paragraph 1. We have some book recommendations here. They have a call out to remind you if you're taking their teaching, writing, structure, and style class, like watch this video. They also want to bring your attention to the fact that retelling narrative stories uses a different process than retelling or summarizing an informational piece of writing. So here are our goals. Here is some background information. And here we are with day 1, continued retelling narrative stories. And they talk about how we're going to break down retelling a narrative story by the characters and the setting, the conflict or the problem, and the climax and the resolution. This can be really hard for kids who are naturally good storytellers and can narrate back stories like it's their job. Summarizing that information and getting it down into a way that we can easily share it with somebody else can be a challenge. So I like that we're breaking down and kind of learning how to do this. Once they get really confident with this, they can also reverse this process where they're going to do their own story and they're going to go through it these different steps. So we have creating a keyword outline for a story, the source text, the emergency room. The text does get a little bit more advanced as you go. Again, you can partner with your child. And here we have an example of a keyword outline for a narrative story where we have our different paragraphs. We're talking about the story sequence chart here, about brainstorming stylistic elements, about using who, which clauses, about vocabulary. Okay, and they include these nice little checklists at the end of your different lessons for your composition. The checklist is growing as they work through the program. In the beginning, they don't have these style dress-ups, so the checklist does not include those. And so this is a way to hold our children accountable for the work that they're doing and start to teach them those skills of editing their own work. Let's fast forward to one of the last lessons in here. This is lesson 23, the tow truck part 1. And this structure is writing from pictures. So this is an example where they're not going to be summarizing a text. They're going to work on the ly adverb, who, which clause, strong verbs, quality adjectives, the casual dress-ups here. Their writing topic is the tow truck pictures, some read aloud stories, and some background information. So then in the student book, they go through the goals, and you're going to sit with your child and go over this. You're going to talk about the background information. Okay, and then the source text is different this time. Do you remember how to write about pictures? Let's review the process. State the central fact for each picture. Brainstorm details by asking questions. When you write, add a clincher sentence. And so then they have some different pictures about the tow truck, and you're going to talk about the different pictures. And write a keyword outline for paragraph 1 based off of your conversation. And so here is an example they provide. In the teacher book, they have this outline filled in with some ideas. The student book does not. So they could either be writing directly on this or in a notebook if you plan on using that with another student. And then it's test the outline, retell the information in complete sentences. When you get to the word clincher, repeat or reflect 2 or 3 keywords from the Roman numeral line. So again, they're learning about how to add that style and their voice in. As they work through these programs and get more confident with their writing, the scaffolding or the support, or training wheels, if you will, of having these, okay, we're going to have this clincher, we're going to do the ly adverbs, all that stuff, we can start to pull back on that and they can start to take ownership of their own style and their own voice with their writing. But having those training wheels there helps them learn how to make their writing more interesting. We move into building vocabulary here. Okay, brainstorming style. So kind of thinking about this before we jump into actually writing it. And then the lesson 23 checklist. Okay. In the student book, we also have, and they have this in the printed off version of the teacher guide as well, but we have the printouts for the different lessons labeled nicely on the top. And then we also have some game boards, and then an appendix for vocabulary, so the different vocabulary words for the different lessons, some ideas for games, okay, and then these hard cardstock pages that you would rip out and cut out. And I like that they have a combination of words selected that are both Tier 2 and Tier 3 vocabulary words. Tier 3 are going to be more content related, like patrol, extinguish. Your Tier 2 words are going to be those words that you're going to see more often, especially as the literature gets more advanced, that are kind of more heavily weighted. So things like resourceful and valiant and appalled, knowledgeable. Those types of words are Tier 2 words, so that's nice that they include that in here. So that is IEW's People and Places in Our Community. This is a program designed to teach explicit systematic writing instruction to kindergarten through 2nd grade. I really think it's most appropriate for 1st or 2nd grade, but if you had a younger student, you could obviously pull them in with this as well. If you have questions about IEW or People and Places in our community, you may drop them in the comments. You can also find me on Instagram at homespun.childhood. I do have a whole guide on my website that I will link below on how to choose IEW and what you do when you get to their website, because let's be honest, it's a little overwhelming. So thank you so much for watching this. If you found this useful or liked this information, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you soon.